All right, so it's kind of getting a little late, and I wanted to do my video for National Suicide Prevention Week, and but today ended up being a busy day, and I just had a hard time getting a solid 10 to 15 minutes of uninterrupted time. So today's discussion about suicide, or maybe monologue, is the idea of a socio-political and economic suicide, which is, I think, a different nuance than the other ones. By the way, before anything, of course, the hotline is 1-800, I think it's just 273-8255. If you know of anybody that is struggling, if you know of, if you're struggling yourself, call that hotline. People are waiting. Please talk to somebody, especially if it's out of depression or some kind of other mental issue that's going on. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or social worker, or any of those kind of things. It's just personal experience, personal thoughts about suicide and all the variations of it. So tonight's variation, or today's variation, is socio-political and economic suicide. And what I mean by that is there's a cognitive behavior that occurs with it, where like social suicide is, there was a case where some woman wanted to protest in Tehran, I think it was, because women are not allowed to watch soccer matches. So she snuck into the soccer field or whatever, and she got arrested. And in the court, and then there was a court trial, and she went to go get her phone back. And I think she was given a judgment, how many ever years or whatever it was. I don't know the exact specific details. You can always look it up. But then she comes out and she pours petrol all over her and sets herself on fire. And she just recently died. And of course, everybody's outraged. And I think, emulsification as a form of suicide is probably one of the most mind-bending things to do. Monks have been known to do it, where they just are in protest and they set themselves on fire, and they commit suicide in that way. And I don't believe that comes from a mental health issue. I think that it seems like a very conscious, cognitive, deliberate act. So that's what I mean by social suicide. You're trying to bring awareness to something or something else. Economic suicide, I'm assuming, when Wall Street went out, people are just, everything plummets, and finances are everything, and you can't support, and you can't do this, and people just would off themselves as a result of economics, where it would just be cheaper to not have you alive, or you've done the math, you've done the calculations. I guess people are used to just some kind of lifestyle, and when they can't maintain that lifestyle, and you can't come out of it, that's, you decide to take your own life. I mean, the stock market plunges, goes into a recession or depression, and that's what happens. People take their own life, people jump, people do things. The other one is political. And I would consider those people, and I'm not putting a morality, that's why I didn't want to say morality or ethics, and social, political, and economic don't necessarily have to do with morality or ethics. I mean, you can have a person doing some kind of social protest in the form of a suicide that you may not agree with their ideology or their morality or ethics as to what they're bringing to attention, but it's still nonetheless a social suicide. So the political one is one of the political ideologies. I would put kamikaze pilots under those under that umbrella. And yeah, and I've heard stories about, they were only given half a tank of fuel, or they were given drugs or propaganda, whatever it is. But if we're talking about a true kamikaze, which is, I'm just going to go, if I'm going to just try to cause as much damage cognitively. I know it's going to be a suicide mission, and that's what's going to happen, is we're all going to die, or as many people die as it can be in my act. I would, have to put not unfortunately, because I say unfortunately only because I don't want to create some kind of controversy, but I would say that suicide bombers have that ideology, whatever there is. It's different, I would say, than some kind of mental issue of depression or or some other kind of issue going on, but like that issue is politically driven. If it's not forced upon you. I'm not talking about the people that are forced to do it. Hey, if you don't do this, we're going to kill your whole family. I'm not talking about that. That's a different type of suicide. In a sense, I would consider that the selfless or self-sacrificing suicide for the sake of others, to save others, which is what I talked about yesterday. But this type of suicide is an ideological one. It is one that says, I'm willing to die for my ideology or my politics, and in the process make a statement like that, where they do that. I'm not condoning it. I'm not preaching about it, but I think that there's a distinctive, different, mentality that comes with that kind of suicide attempt or suicide action. And then they say things like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go up to heaven and receive whatever salvation I'm going to have because of that." I mean, that's no different than any other kind of, whatever anybody believes the afterlife to be is as their driving force. If that's what you believe salvation comes in form of, then that's what you're going to do. But this is really just about a social, political, and economic variations of suicide. And I'm not a sociologist, so I don't know all the various reasons of why people would commit such acts, but there is a distinctive difference in these acts. So, I should put the light on. So to that end, I hope it's been something to that. I think that there's a difference versus my own personal suicide attempt of just wanting to just numb things and have things go away. That is a completely different motive. Or people who are doing selfless, jumping on a grenade to save their brethrens or others. That's different than this socio-political, economic variations. Anyway, excuse my gift to gab, as always. 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-TALK, 273-TALK. If you're thinking about suicide, if you're wanting to do it, talk to people. Get it out. You don't have to. You don't even have to do this social, political, and economic. I mean, that girl left the courthouse. She could have let it go, right? She could have just moved on. She could have said, okay, this issue is not worth my life. And she could have just not done that. And that is always an option. Maybe there's other ways that people can bring awareness to the table besides taking their own life. And so to that end, I wish everybody a good night. Just notice your mind. Call the hotline if you need help. And I'll be back here tomorrow to talk about day 6, I believe. Thank you for listening.